Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode 60 of 2024. It's AFL Finals Week 3, prelim finals coming up, some big games. Who checks their ticket to the grand final? We will find out over the coming couple days. Big weekend of footy. We'll review the last weekend's games, the two semi-finals that took place, and we'll be previewing the two prelim finals coming up this weekend. Big action. As always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know down in the comments who you think will be playing off in the grand final for 2024. It's down to 4. Got a chance. If you're still in it, anyone's game. Also, don't forget to check out all the socials. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, at All Aussie Rules everywhere. Podcast comes out twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. Mondays at the moment is the AFLW episode. Fridays is the AFL Men's episode. So here we are. It's Friday morning. I'm recording this Thursday night. Obviously, teams have just been released in the last hour, so we'll jump through them. We'll check out the results from last week. A lot to get through, so let's jump straight into it. That's not the right screen. Ignore that one. Friday night football was Port Adelaide Hawthorn at Adelaide Oval. Massive game for both teams. Port Adelaide coming off a really bad loss the week before. Hawthorn obviously coming off a really good win against the Doggies. Hockball was flying. It came to an end here in what was a cracker game. It was close most of the night, and in the end, 3-point win to Port Adelaide. First quarter, it was 2-0 in the first quarter. It wasn't the most entertaining. It was entertaining, not the highest scoring game though, early or at any point really. Second quarter was 3-4 in favour of Hawthorn, so they got themselves back in it, only 9 points down at half time. After conceding the first one of the second quarter. So they were 3-0 down at one point. Some poor kicking in that first half. Looked like it might be costly for Port Adelaide, but they certainly tightened their ship up in that second half. Third quarter, Port Adelaide only kicked 2 goals. Meanwhile, Hawthorn kicked 3 to get within 5 points. Going into the final quarter, Hawthorn even kicked the first goal of the last quarter to tie it up. Before Port Adelaide kicked 3 quick ones, which looked like it was going to turn the game. Georgiadis, Burgoyne, and then Horn Francis all kicked one each. And at the 8-minute mark of the final quarter, they were up by 3 goals, and it looked like that might be it. But Hawthorn had another crack at it. Sicily got one, Ginnivan kicked one, and then Georgiadis got one back to give him a little bit of breathing room. And then McGuinness for Hawthorn kicked it one to get him within, I think, 4 points, And then Sicily missed one with about a minute to go. And that was how the scores finished. It was an absolute cracker. Went down to the wire. There was a little bit of niggle after the game as well between Ken Hinkley, Jack Ginnivan, and Sicily. But all a little bit of banter. No harm done. Play on, I think. AFL didn't think so. They gave Hinkley a $20,000 fine. But we'll jump now into the stats for the game. We'll start with team stats, as we usually do. I don't have a graphic for it. We're just going to talk about it, how the game went. Hawthorn plus 15 disposals, so had plenty of the football, mainly handball, They were down 21 in kicks, but obviously, therefore, dominated the handball game. Inside 50s was clearly dominated by Port Adelaide, pretty much from start to finish. They were plus 9, Port Adelaide there, so certainly dominated the territory battle. As I said, they kicked poorly in the first half. They certainly tightened that up in the second half. But Hawthorn kicked straight all day, and that kind of kept them in it. Obviously, Sicily missed that goal from 50 metres with a couple minutes to go, but it was a really tough shot, so not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Forward efficiency-wise, Port Adelaide were really quite poor, which is usually where they're best at, so 41.2% is well below their their season average of about 50. So Hawthorn defensively did really well in that regard. Meanwhile, Hawthorn's forward efficiency was 45.2, which is about where Hawthorn usually is, slightly down on where they've probably been for the 6 weeks going into this game, but still pretty solid. And yeah, when you keep the other team to 41.2% in finals, you're going to give yourself a chance. And I mean, they had every chance in this one. They just didn't quite finish it off. Clearance game +2 to Port Adelaide for the game. -1 in centre clearances, but +3 in stoppage clearances. So not much difference between the two teams in that centre first ball use throughout the game. Contested footy, +16 for Port Adelaide. So Port Adelaide were really good at this. Contested footy all night. It's probably not always their best part of their game, but on Friday night it certainly was a crucial area. I did say last week that I thought the uncontested footy game was going to be crucial for Port Adelaide to really do well in. They lost uncontested footy by 39, which if you had to tell me that before the game, I would have said, well, they might be in trouble. But even though they did lose the uncontested footy, they managed to win the turnover game by +6, which is a huge stat with the way Hawthorn had been playing for the last 5-6 weeks. Ever since really the Collingwood game, they've just been dominating the turnover game week in, week out, whereas this time to lose it was crucial in Hawthorn losing this match, in my opinion. I don't know if there was anything else too outstanding. Port Adelaide obviously led for most of the game, 111 minutes. They led by 22 points at one point in the second quarter. Tackle game +6 to Hawthorn. Not too many other exciting stats in the main stat categories. We'll just jump into have a look at how the that game went on the weekend. Some stats behind, I guess not behind the game, but some of the more random stats, I guess. Score sources for starters. That's always an important thing in games. Hawthorn did well from stoppages, plus even though stoppages in number-wise was very similar. 8 goals 4 to 6-5 in favour of Hawthorn, so really good there. But the turnover game, as I said, those turnover numbers from Port Adelaide were really good all game. And they kicked 5 goals 4 to 2 goals 2 from turnover. So that turnover stat is pretty much where this game was won and lost, in my opinion. Score origin, interestingly enough, Port Adelaide, did really well from the back line. From the defensive half, 5 goals out of their 11, 4 from the forward half and 2 from the centre bounce, whereas Hawthorn were getting all their goals from forward half intercepts and forward half gain of possession. They kicked 6 goals from the forward half. Overall, I think Port Adelaide probably should have won by a little bit more than they did. Probably about a 10 to 15 point margin, I would have thought, based on the stats, based on what we saw. But Hawthorn stuck around, almost got this one, but didn't quite manage to pull it off, I guess, in the end. We'll jump into some of the best players. I think most people, in all honesty, thought that Jace Burgoyne was best on ground. I would struggle to argue against it. He was everywhere, certainly in that first half, but all throughout the game. He had 25 touches, gained 285 metres, which is pretty solid. He had 6 ground ball gets, 7 intercepts, 7 contested possessions as well for him is really good. He had that goal as well. There was a crucial goal at a crucial point of the match. So he had a really good game. I think the other two big performers for Port Adelaide in this one, Willie Rioli was outstanding. I think he was underrated a bit in what he did. 15 touches, he kicked 2 goals, 1. He was involved in everything that Port Adelaide was doing well. He had 3 goal assists in a low-scoring game as well as kicking 2. There's no doubt about it. He was incredible all game and very crucial in getting Port Adelaide across the line in this one. Every time they needed something, he popped up and he did something magical. As I said, 3 goal assists, 2 goals. So 5 out of their 11 goals were either scored by Willie Rioli or directly assisted from Willie Rioli. So outstanding performance from him. Jordan Sweet was best ruckman on the ground. I think he gave the Hawthorn rucks all game a bit of a bath, in all honesty. Lloyd Meek has had a really good season, but I personally don't think... I think that Jordan Sweet beat him in this one. I mean, Meek was good. I think Sweet was better. He was really, really good. 15 touches, 13 contested possessions. Just got involved where he needed to. Ended up with 52 hit-outs as well, which is a huge amount in this game. For Hawthorn, Jai Newcomb continued his stellar back half of the season. He was one of the best players on the ground. He had 31 touches, 16 contested possessions, 13 ground ball gets, which was by far the best, or not by far, but quite comfortably the best on the ground. And yeah, he was just really, really good from start to finish. Didn't quite get involved in enough scores, or as many scores as he typically does, but was still a really good performance. Nick Watson popped up really good first half, kicked 3 goals for the day, was crucial in some good moments. Who else was outstanding for them? They had a couple multiple goal kickers, so Jack Ginnivan kicked 2. Was a bit quiet certainly early, but started to pop up late. Ended up being very important, kicking that goal in the last quarter that gave him a chance, but yeah, a little too late for that. Georgiades kicked 3 for Port Adelaide. Darcy Byrne-Jones kicked 2. As we said, Willie Rioli kicked 2. Overall, it was a great performance from Port Adelaide. I think Burgoyne, as I said, gets best on ground. I would probably put Willie Rioli as second best on ground just because of how damaging his touches were. Every time he got the ball, good things were happening. And I'd probably put Jai Newcomb third best on ground. Certainly Hawthorn's best player on the day, in my opinion. So that's Port Adelaide Hawthorn Friday night semi-final. That's how it went down. Hawthorn got eliminated. Port Adelaide go on to the next round. If you haven't already, head over to my YouTube and check out. We published the Hawthorn season review episode just a couple days ago, so go check that out. We look at all the numbers for them for the year, their best players for the year, and all of that. So go check it out. Hockball 2024 nearly came from nowhere to snatch it all, but they fall in 6th place at the end. A really solid year from them. Port Adelaide would have been disaster if they had lost this one, let's be honest. Ken Hingley probably would have been gone from coaching Port Adelaide, and but they breathe another day. It'll be interesting to see how they go this weekend. We'll jump into that game in a minute, but it'll be interesting to see what happens if they do get smacked by the Sydney Football Club on Friday night. We'll jump into the second game of the semi-final weekend, and this was one of, if not the most crazy games you'll ever see. GWS v Brisbane at NG Stadium. On Saturday night, it was GWS losing it 15-10-100 to the Brisbane Lions 15-15-105. At the end of the day, who saw this coming? Who saw a collapse for the ages from GWS? We'll run through the game a little bit. It's a crazy little worm timeline. So first 15 minutes was pretty tight before GWS kicked 3 in a row through Peatling kicking 2 and Jesse Hogan kicking 1, which gave him a little break just before quarter time. But Brisbane snatched back a couple and were within a couple points early in the second quarter before GWS kicked the last 3 goals of the second quarter. Again, Jesse Hogan being crucial in that. Toby Green getting 1 as well, so 2 for Hogan, 1 for Green. And they went into halftime 21 points up, certainly not over. Brisbane kicking poorly at 4 goals 10. But GWS not kicking the straightest of all time either. They had 8 goals 7, so fully game on, but a bit of a poor kicking performance was hurting Brisbane for sure. Third quarter started all one-way traffic. GWS kicked goals through Briggs, Jesse Hogan got another one. Then Tom Green got one. And then Lockie Ash put them up by 44 points. Yep, that's right. 44 points with 18 minutes into the third quarter. So not that long to go. We're halfway through the third quarter. And they're 44 points up before an incredible 5-minute spurt got Brisbane right back into it. Lohman kicked the first, then McInerney, then Charlie Cameron, Zach Bailey, Dane Zorko. Got them really quite close before GWS just settled a little bit and kicked the last two of the third quarter. And it looked at this point that they might have just done enough just to steady the momentum. GWS were up by 25 points at three-quarter time. And when they kicked the first goal of the fourth quarter, it looked like that might be it. 31 points up with, most of a quarter to go. But having kicked the last three, you'd think, they might be fine. Hipwood got one. Charlie Cameron got one. Then there was a little bit of a gap before Zorko and then Jasper Fletcher kicked one each. And then in the last dying 5 minutes, Joe Danaher kicks two, including one from the boundary in an incredible kick, and snatches the win by 5 points in the end. Unreal game. To go from 44 points down halfway through the third quarter to winning by 5 is an incredible effort, and there's not much more to say about it. It was crazy. Crazy performance. We'll jump into some of the stats from this game. First off, the main stats that everybody sees. GWS led possessions for the game, plus 22, mainly through handballing. They are typically more of a disposal-getting team than Brisbane. Inside 50s dominated by Brisbane overall in the night, 56-49, so plus 7. Once again, not that surprising. GWS don't always dominate the territory battle, and overall they probably are around even, whereas Brisbane are a team that does dominate that forward ground quite a lot, but they don't always convert it. And in this one, they converted it quite well into shots. They just couldn't kick straight, certainly early in that first half of the football game. Both teams, though, creating shots from inside 50s was really high. 59.2% from GWS is one of their best of the season. Meanwhile, Brisbane at 51.8% is about their average. So pretty solid, but certainly disappointing with, I guess, how they finished, certainly in that first half. They tidied that up in the second half, though. Hit-outs were dominated by Kieran Breeks, 69-38 for the Giants. Clearances +4 to Brisbane for the game, so pretty solid numbers there. Contested footy was +6 to GWS, and uncontested footy was +21 to GWS. As I said before, they are a team that gets plenty of the football. Turnover game was surprisingly won by GWS +1. We'll get into scoring sources in a minute to see what they actually did with those turnovers. I mean, +1 is not much of a margin, but it certainly is a margin. GWS had 16 marks inside 50, so to finish the game with 15 goals, 10 from 16 marks inside 50 is not always the best result, but it's a result. Time in front, 129 minutes GWS led this one for. Crazy. To lead for that amount of time and lose. And what's even crazier, in all honesty, is if I can get my stat sheet up, which is debatable whether I can or not, I'm pretty sure the numbers get even crazier for them. So they, in the last 2 weeks of their season, the 2 finals that they played, led for 121 minutes in their prelim final and lost it, and then led for 129 minutes in their semi-final and lost it. So absolutely bizarre scenes that 2 weeks in a row they dominate the games, lead for pretty much the whole time, and just fall over towards the end. Certainly an interesting way for their season to finish. 85 tackles to 65 in favour of the Giants. They are a really good tackling team, and Brisbane are certainly not anywhere near the top tackling teams in the competition. Have a look at some of the more random stats, I guess, that live out there. Interestingly, metres gained is the stat that typically tells you who wins. Not always, but quite regularly. Brisbane plus almost 280 metres for this game. So suggests that they were certainly getting the ball forward a lot more. Score sources. We said GWS won the turnover game in this match. They did not win the scoring from turnovers, though. Brisbane went 9-4-58, whereas GWS was 6-2-38. So that just tells you right there that Brisbane made use of their turnover game. They didn't win more turnovers than the other team, but they certainly managed to convert them into scores well. Scores from stoppages, Brisbane were really inaccurate from these. 6 goals, 10, so 16 scoring shots. GWS also had 16 scoring shots, but went 8-8, so a little bit more accurately kicking in front of goal there. We look at score origin from field position, I guess, pretty similar across the board. Brisbane plus 8 from defensive half, GWS plus 8 from forward half, and Brisbane plus 5 from the centre bounce. So interesting stats, I guess, mainly in the fact that Brisbane could have probably won by more if they had have kicked a little bit straighter from stoppage, in all honesty. We'll look at the best players now on the ground for this game. We'll start with a winning team because that's probably where we typically see the best players on the ground. Not necessarily in this one, but usually. What have we got? We had quite a few midfielders do well, I guess, for Brisbane. For both teams, probably, in all honesty. We'll start with goal kickers, I guess, for Brisbane, actually. Joe Danaher kicked 4. He was really good, including the last 2 to win the game for them. So, crucial goals and crucial plays from the tall forward who really wants that premiership, I guess. Kai Lohman, he kicked a couple. Charlie Cameron also got 2. And Dane Zorko kicked 2. In what was maybe a little bit more of a forward attacking role than he's played most of this season. Goal kickers for GWS. Jesse Hogan kicked 5. Outstanding season from him all round. Finished on a high as well, so great season from him. Toby Green kicked 3 in what was probably one of his top 3 performances of the year. He was really, really good in this one. And James Peatling kicked 2 from GWS as well. So they were the multiple goal kickers for both teams. I think Jesse Hogan's probably best on ground just about in this one. For Brisbane, the best players, Jared Berry was really good. He had 27 touches, 13 of those contested, 12 ground ball gets. So great effort there. As well as 2 goal assists, which sometimes gets forgotten. Jeez, I know how to talk. Hugh McCluggage was good, 24 touches. Will Ashcroft was outstanding, 27 touches, 14 contested. 5 score involvements, a goal assist. He was good. Joe Danaher, as we said, kicked 4 goals, crucial goals as well. He was good. And plenty of other good performances, I guess, from the Brisbane Footy Club. Got them over the line. Just a concerted effort from everyone, probably, in that second half. Got them back in it and got them the win in the end. The best players for GWS. Kieran Briggs finished his season off pretty well. He was probably better than Oscar McInerney in the end. He had certainly more hit-outs. So maybe the best ruckman on the ground. Tom Green was outstanding, without a doubt. 21 contested possessions, 15 ground ball gets, which, I mean, he always gets his own footy a lot, but 15 was the most on the field and the most of the weekend from both games. 10 clearances was really good. 8 score involvements, which is something that he doesn't tend to get the greatest number of, is score involvements, because he does tend to be winning the ball in the back half a lot. But to do 8 score involvements in this game was a really good performance from him. Equal best for GWS, and only Archie and Will Ashcroft for Brisbane were more in the match. As we said, Jesse Hogan was their best player, probably with 5 goals. Toby Green was great with 3 goals, goal assist. Certainly was effective. Cullen Ward got plenty of it. Jack Buckley was a good key defender in this one. If we're going to give a 3-2-1 in this one, it's an interesting game which way we go in this one, because Jesse Hogan kicked 5, was outstanding throughout the game. Contested marks 6, that's how he got his goals all year, was just contested mark footy. You kick it to him 1-on-1, he's going to mark it. He's never losing them. It's crazy. I think he gets the 3. In all honesty, I think he was probably best on, which is crazy to say in a losing team. But I'm going to give him the 3. I think Jared Berry maybe gets the 2. It's between him and Will Ashcroft, in my opinion. Tom Green, unlucky. I'm going to go Berry, Ashcroft, and honourable mention to Tom Green, who probably should be in the top 3 players, maybe, but they're the top 4 players. That's the order I'm going to put them. What's that mean for both teams? Obviously, Brisbane Lions, they go into another prelim. They go down to the MCG, play Geelong. They'll have to win 2 games in a row at the MCG. Obviously, last time they played there was a couple-point loss to Collingwood in the dying moments, so they certainly will remember that. But it's going to be a big game. It's going to be a tough game for them to win, but if they get through that, they're going to have a crack at one of the other non-Victorian teams in a grand final at the MCG. So this is a huge, huge match for them. And I think they're better than last year, in all honesty. They had a slow start to the year, but I think Will Ashcroft is a huge add to this team. What he's done has been huge since he's come in around the second half of the season. For GWS, that's the end of their season. Bit disappointing after finishing, where did they finish? 4th on the ladder. Go out in straight sets is never fun for anyone. I think they overperformed a little bit during the home and away season to get top 4. But either way, 2 games that they should have probably won based on how much they led and a lot of the stats. They should have certainly won one of them. But 2 close losses, and that's the end of their season. Certainly a different feel from the end of their last season, where they made the run late in the year and played well in the first 2 weeks of the finals before falling in a prelim to Collingwood by a point. It suggests, I don't know where they go from here, because they've used an incredible season from Jesse Hogan to get them this far this year. In all honesty, I think he's been their most important player. The amount of contested marks he gets, he's kicked goals, he kicks straight week in, week out. He's just an outstanding player, and I think he's been huge in them getting to the point where they did. If you haven't already, go check out. It would have gone live yesterday, I believe, the GWS end of season review. We have a look at where they're at, what went right, what went wrong for them this year, and what we can kind of expect from them going forward into 2025. So that's the end of, I guess, the wrap-up of week 2 of AFL Finals. We'll now jump into prelim final weekend and a little preview. There's also preview videos up on my YouTube channel for both games. Only one possibly live at the moment. The Sydney-Port Adelaide game is live, the preview for that on my YouTube channel. So check that out, just a 5-6 minute preview of the game. The Geelong Brisbane game will be going live in about probably 10 hours after this video podcast goes live. So check them out. Just concise preview that gives you all the information you need, I guess, going into the game. We'll look at the teams for Sydney v Port Adelaide here. Callum Mills out injured. Robbie Fox comes in, obviously. Big loss for Callum Mills. Interesting that Robbie Fox comes in and not Taylor Adams. But big call from Sydney there. For Port Adelaide, 2 ins, Charlie Dixon and Ryan Burton. Going out goes Todd Marshall and Will Lawrence. Interesting to say the least. We got... What else do we have here? 250th game for Dane Rampy and 200th game for Isaac Heaney. It should be a cracker, in all honesty, on Friday night footy at the SCG. The history of these two teams is very one-way traffic for Port Adelaide. Is Sydney their bunny team? You'd have to think at the moment they are. Does that continue after tomorrow? We'll see. But Port Adelaide have won the last 8 matchups between these two teams, including the last time they played when Port Adelaide met them at Adelaide only like 8 weeks ago. I'm not exactly sure how many weeks ago it was, but roughly 6 to 8 weeks ago, when Port Adelaide won by 112 points. I'm sure everyone remembers it because it was the most absurd result of the year. They kicked 71-0 to start the match and just continued on, which is absolutely unreal, in all honesty, that happened, I guess. Crazy scenes. If we look at the stats, it's a weird matchup because both teams kind of match up similarly to each other in a lot of stat categories. You look at defensive scoring. Offensively, Sydney has certainly scored a lot better than Port Adelaide throughout the season. But defensive scoring is similar. The accuracy is completely different, no doubt about that. Port Adelaide, the worst or least accurate team in the competition, whereas Sydney are one of the better ones. Forward efficiency, though, very similar numbers, 51.3 for Port Adelaide, 50.4 for Sydney, so very similar numbers there. Defensive efficiency is certainly in Port Adelaide's favour here, 46.4%, but that's not that much difference, even though Sydney are 13th and Port Adelaide 5th. The actual numbers aren't too far apart. Inside 50s, pretty close again, 4th and 7th best team. Neither team is especially great in terms of disposal efficiency, but I think that is probably one of the least important stats in the game. Surprisingly, because, I mean, you do need to control the ball, look after the ball if you want to win, but disposal efficiency isn't always the best read on that. Clearances, very similar, 4th v 6th. Contested footy, both teams struggle, 14th versus 15th. Uncontested footy, 9th versus 10th. So all these numbers are very similar between both teams, which makes it a fascinating watch on Friday night football. The tackle differential, Port Adelaide 4th, Sydney 5th. And the turnover game as well, 11th for Port Adelaide, 12th for Sydney. The numbers just read so similarly that it makes me think that these two teams match up really, really close. And maybe that's why Sydney struggle so much with Port Adelaide. I mean, there's no perfect way of knowing exactly the reasons behind why one team struggles so much against the other, but it's certainly fascinating. Last time Sydney beat Port Adelaide was round 2016. So it is a long time. They only ever play one match against each other every year. Like, they haven't played each other twice in a year since before 2015, which is absurd when you consider the fact that they're both teams that have been in finals many of those years. Like, Sydney have probably made finals 5 or 6 at least of those years, and probably the same can be said for Port Adelaide. So it's wild that they only have ever met once a year against each other in that time frame. What else is worth noting here? I think the midfield battle will be huge in determining this winner. I think Isaac Heaney's going to come out and want to perform outstandingly after what happened in the 2022 Grand Final. I expect 2 big games from him. Chad Warner, Errol Goulden, all their best players are all the midfield guns. There's no doubt about it. And the same can be said for Port Adelaide, in all honesty, probably. Across the year, their most consistent, best players are Zach Butters, Dan Houston, Horn Francis, Rose, William Drew, all their midfielders. However, as I said in the review of their last week's game, Willie Rioli, he was their most important player last week. Will Sydney be able to stop him? Because if he plays like he did last week, I don't know if Sydney have anyone that can stop him. In all honesty, his ability to influence a game is almost second to none in this match, I would say. I don't know if Sydney have someone similarly that can take it away so quickly. They certainly have some good players in their forward line, don't get me wrong. But I just don't know if they have someone of Willie Rioli's skill set that just kind of turns a game and like he did on the weekend. So we'll see, but it will probably be a midfield battle. Who wins out of Heaney, Warner, Goulden, Rowbottom versus Butters, Houston? Horn Francis and Rose will go a long way to winning this game. Both sets of midfielders can kick lots of goals. I think that Sydney midfield is probably better at that. But at the same time, I think the Port Adelaide forward line is probably slightly better than the Sydney forward line. But we'll see how that plays out. It should be a cracking game. I think Port Adelaide, the fact that they've got the wood over Sydney over recent years, gets them right back into this game. It's going to be tough at the SCG, but I think that gets them back in this one. But I guess we'll find out on Friday night. In the other game, it's Saturday night footy. It's Geelong v Brisbane at the MCG. One change in this match, Tom Stewart comes back in for Zach Tui. I mean, you have to bring Tom Stewart in, there's no doubt about it. Bit unlucky for Zach Tui that he's the one that goes out. I mean, Geelong have some good names not playing in this one not due to injury. So Zach Tui, Sam Decoding, and Ted Closey, all emergencies, is pretty solid list of players to not be in your team, in all honesty. Whereas Brisbane go into this unchanged from what beat GWS on the weekend. So interesting lineups in a way, but also probably mostly expected, I guess. It certainly would be hard deciding who to drop from that Geelong team because they were perfect against Port Adelaide. The whole team was pretty much perfect. They've only met once this year. It was up at the Gabba in the wet, and Geelong won a game where Brisbane kicked very poorly. Brisbane kicked 4 goals, 13 for the day, and Geelong kicked 9-9-63. They obviously met in the 2022 prelim final, so that's only 2 years ago, and Geelong absolutely smoked them by 71 points. I'm sure both teams remember that quite vividly because, I mean, the Geelong team's changed a fair bit. They've got a lot of young players that have come in, but the core is still there, and Brisbane's pretty much the same team that was in their 2022. They also played in the 2020 prelim final, and once again, Geelong won it quite comfortably by 40 points. So this is the third time in 5 seasons that they're going to have been playing off in a prelim final. It happens every round number at the moment, which is quite funny in a way. But I think Geelong have the wood over them. It's at the MCG. History tells you that this is going to be tough for Brisbane to win. We'll have a look at some of the stats in this one now. Geelong obviously 4-1 over the last 5 weeks. Brisbane are 3-2, but they have won their last 3, so they're finding form at the right time now. Offensively, both teams score very similar numbers, 95.5 to 93.36. Second and third best offences in the AFL. Sydney are the first, so 3 of the last 4 teams are the 3 highest scoring teams of the year, and then Port Adelaide have dropped off certainly since finals have come around, their scoring has dropped the last 2 weeks, so they're the exception to the rule in the final four. Defensively, both teams pretty good overall. Geelong went through a patch there where they defensively conceded a bit more than they would have liked, but overall still pretty good. Forward efficiency, defensive efficiency, both teams not too dissimilar in overall numbers. I think the big issue for Brisbane all year has been their accuracy. 46.6% is quite low. They're 15th ranked team in terms of that. Inside 50 and territory is where Brisbane dominate games. They've done it all year, and they just let themselves down with their finishing, I guess. But plus 9.6 inside 50s a game is number one in the AFL. Geelong pretty solid in that area, but still only ranked 8th. Clearances, you'd imagine, is probably going to go the way of Brisbane. Geelong not a team that dominates clearances, but this could be an exception to the rule because the game changes when you get to finals. There's no doubt about it. And this, I would imagine, is probably going to be similar, that we'll see a different Geelong than we've probably seen most of the season. Certainly if Brisbane bring the heat against them. Contested footy is where Brisbane dominate games, plus 9.2 per game. Once again, Geelong not that great in that area. Uncontested footy is also something that Brisbane dominate and will likely dominate in this match. However, tackles is an area that Brisbane do not dominate, so we'll probably see Geelong do well there. And the most important area of Geelong's game is their turnover game, their ability to cause the opposition to turn it over, and their ability of their players to not turn it over themselves is their greatest area of their game. That's where they score their points from. What they did against Port Adelaide and what they did against West Coast was huge in the turnover game. I think they scored 70 points in both games. 70 plus points, that is, from the turnover, which is an outstanding effort. And just kind of shows you where they really emphasise their game. They don't dominate the clearances. They don't dominate the territory, but they will force you to turn it over. And when you do, they will make you pay. They go forward very differently than pretty much every other team in the AFL. They go forward by not so much kicking to contested areas. They put the ball in space. They will aim for the ground ball because Jeremy Cameron's the best ground ball tall in the game by far. You don't want him to have any space. He'll pick up the ball and he'll kick a goal from anywhere or create a goal from anywhere. So he plays very different than every other tall forward in the competition, and that's dangerous. But this Brisbane backline is really strong, so it'll be interesting to see. I think they have to send Harris Andrews to Jeremy Cameron, in my opinion. But at the same time, they might send him to Ollie Henry. We'll see how that plays out. We'll see on Saturday night. It's going to be a cracker. I hope that Brisbane bring their best. They can't afford to kick poorly like they did last time they played Geelong, but also last week, where in that first half, they pretty much threw the game away. They got away with it in the end by having an incredible final quarter and a half. But in all honesty, if they do kick that poorly, if they kick 4 goals 10 in the first half against Geelong, they will not win. I can tell you right now, they will not win that game of football. So, yeah, that's my opinion. We'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be a game that's probably won by converting opportunities. Which forward line can make use of it? If Jeremy Cameron gets off the leash early and kicks 3 or 4 in the first half, you might have to just head home on the bus, Brisbane, because that might be all she wrote. We'll have a look at my tips for the last week and this week, and that will wrap up the episode. Last week was a disaster. We went Hawthorn by 16. They got done in a tight one. And then we went GWS by 3. I mean, we're only a total of 8 points off on that match and only 20 points off in the other one, but we got them both wrong. I went for the favourites in both, and the favourites lost. So that's on me. You cop that sometimes. I've gone the 2 favourites again, which is probably not the wisest decision. But Sydney, I think they're going to turn around their disappointing record against Port Adelaide and win this by 21. I think they're the better team. So I'm sticking with them. Their midfield, I think, just gets the job done in this one. And then in Geelong, Brisbane, I think Brisbane bring it to Geelong all the way, but I just don't know if they can get over the line in this one. So I've gone Geelong by 5, which will mean we have a rematch of the 2022 Grand Final. Hopefully, if that is the case, it's a little bit closer of a contest than the 2022 Grand Final, because that was not the most enjoyable game you'll ever watch. That's the podcast. Episode 60 in the books. It's prelim final week. As I said at the start, jump in the comments and let me know who you think the two teams playing off in the 2024 Grand Final will be. Jump in there and let me also know any thoughts you have for the podcast going forward. For the next few weeks at least, we'll still be doing 2 a week. One previewing the men's game, which will be coming out on every Friday, and reviewing men's game as well. And then one on every Monday looking at the AFLW and everything that's going on this season. So stick around, check all that out. There's plenty of other content over on the YouTube channel, so go check that out as well. Like, comment, subscribe, all those things. Check out the social medias. There's plenty of them at All Aussie Rules everywhere. Thanks for tuning in. Plenty of content coming out early next week. Brownlow Day on Monday, so the Brownlow preview video will be going live on Sunday on the YouTube channel, so go check that out before the Brownlow count. Thanks for watching. This has been All Aussie Rules. We'll be back on Monday. Thanks again.